The rain fell hard against the roof of the small, broken-down house, dripping through cracks and landing in small puddles on the cold floor. Inside, Maria sat clutching her infant son to her chest, rocking him back and forth as he whimpered weakly. His face was pale, his breath shallow, his little body burning with fever. She whispered soothing words, though her own tears betrayed the fear choking her heart. For weeks, she had pleaded with her family for help, food, medicine, even a little kindness, but their patience had run out. She was too young, too poor, and now too much of a burden. That morning, her father's voice had been like a blade. You and that child must go. We cannot carry your mistakes any longer. And with that, the door had slammed behind her. Now, soaked to the bone, Maria walked along the muddy road with her baby wrapped in the only blanket she owned. The world around her was unforgiving, neighbors turned away when she begged for shelter. Some shook their heads in pity, others in judgment, but none opened their doors. Every step felt heavier, as though the earth itself wanted to swallow her despair. She whispered to her baby, "Hold on, me Angel, hold on for me." But the boy's tiny cries grew weaker, his body limp in her arms. She stumbled toward the edge of the village, where people often said no one should wander, land once belonging to the Apache, where a few still lived, holding on to traditions the rest of the world had tried to erase. To Maria, it did not matter where she went. She had nowhere left. As the rain turned into a mist, she collapsed beneath a tree, clutching her son tightly against her chest. Her lips trembled as she prayed for a miracle, any miracle. She did not notice the tall figure approaching until a shadow fell over her. Startled, she looked up into the face of a man with long, dark hair tied back, his weathered skin etched with years of hardship, his eyes deep and searching. He wore a simple leather vest, and though his presence was imposing, his gaze carried no cruelty. "Why are you here?" he asked in a low, steady voice. Maria swallowed her fear. I have nowhere else. My baby is sick. We were cast out. Please, we just need a place to rest." The man crouched beside her, looking at the child. He reached out gently, brushing his rough fingers against the boy's forehead. His brows furrowed at the heat of the fever. He did not ask her name, nor her past, nor her mistakes. Instead, he looked into her tear-filled eyes and said softly, "Here, you have a new family." For a moment, Maria could not comprehend the words. They sounded too kind, too impossible. But before she could protest, the man scooped her baby into his arms with surprising tenderness and gestured for her to follow. He led her to a small community hidden among the trees, where several modest huts circled a fire. Children ran barefoot in the dirt, women stirred pots of stew, and old men sat in silence, watching the flames dance. All heads turned as the stranger brought her in, and Maria felt her chest tighten with fear of rejection once more. But the man simply raised his voice and said, "This woman and her child are ours now. Treat them as such." No one argued. An elderly woman approached, her silver hair braided, her eyes kind but firm. She guided Maria to sit by the fire, wrapping a warm blanket around her trembling shoulders. Another woman took the baby carefully, murmuring prayers as she placed cool herbs on his skin. The heat of the fire, the smell of broth, and the gentle hum of voices lulled Maria into a daze. She had expected scorn, yet here there was only care. That night, Maria lay on a bed of woven blankets inside one of the huts, her baby sleeping peacefully beside her for the first time in days. She could hear the quiet breathing of others in the hut, strangers who had made room for her without hesitation. Her heart ached with gratitude. She whispered into the darkness, "Thank you, whoever you are." Days turned into weeks. The Apache community welcomed Maria as though she had always been one of them. They taught her to grind corn into flour, to weave baskets, to gather roots and herbs for medicine. The children laughed with her baby, who grew stronger each day, his laughter like music that filled the air. For the first time in a long time, Maria felt she belonged. Yet not everything was easy. One evening, as she washed clothes by the river, she heard two women whispering. "Why should we care for her? She is not one of us. She brings nothing but more mouths to feed." The word stung, reopening old wounds of rejection. Maria lowered her head, fighting tears. That night, she thought of leaving again, unwilling to be a burden. But the tall man who had first found her noticed her silence. He sat beside her by the fire and asked, "Why do you carry shame that is not yours?" Maria looked at him, struggling to speak. "Because I don't deserve this kindness. I am no one. My family cast me out. I have nothing to give." The man's gaze was steady, his voice calm. "You have love for your child. That is enough. Here, we do not measure worth by what you bring, but by who you are. And you are a mother willing to endure the world for her son. That makes you strong. That makes you family." His words struck deep. For the first time, Maria allowed herself to believe she was worthy of love and belonging. The tears she cried that night were not of sorrow, but of release. Seasons changed, and Maria became part of the heartbeat of the community. She learned their songs, their stories, their ways of healing. She shared her laughter, her hard work, and her resilience. The women who once whispered now worked beside her, sharing smiles and stories. The children adored her son, chasing him as he learned to walk, calling him Little Eagle. One winter, a sickness spread through the nearby village, the same one that had once rejected her. Many children grew weak, and the villagers, desperate, came seeking help from the Apache, whom they had long ignored and feared. Maria watched as the elders gathered herbs, prepared medicines, and opened their arms to those who once turned their backs. She saw mothers clutching their children, just as she once had, begging for mercy. In that moment, Maria realized the true meaning of family. It was not blood, nor name, nor history. It was compassion, the willingness to stand with another in their darkest hour. She stepped forward, offering her hands, her knowledge, her heart. She helped comfort the sick, carried bowls of broth, whispered words of hope to mothers who had once looked away from her. When the sickness passed and lives were spared, the villagers bowed their heads in shame and gratitude. Maria did not need their apologies. She had already found her home. Years later, as her son grew strong and tall, Maria would often tell him the story of the night they were cast out, and the moment the Apache had said, "Here, you have a new family." She told him that kindness is a seed planted in the darkest soil, and when watered with love, it grows into something that shelters many. She told him that true strength lies not in turning away from the broken, but in lifting them into the circle of warmth. Her son listened with wide eyes, his heart swelling with pride. And as he grew into a man, he carried that lesson within him, offering his hands and his heart to anyone in need, just as the Apache once did for his mother. The world outside remained harsh, filled with judgment and cruelty, but Maria no longer feared it. She had walked through abandonment, through rain and hunger, through the cold of rejection. And she had found, at the end of it all, that there are still places where love is greater than fear, where strangers become family, and where the cast out are welcomed home. And so her story became more than just her own. It became a testament whispered by firesides, a tale of a mother and her child who were given a second chance by the kindness of those who had little, but gave everything. It reminded everyone who heard it that the most powerful families are not always the ones we are born into, but the ones who choose us, who see our worth when the world does not. And every time she repeated those words, "Here, you have a new family," Maria felt her heart beat with gratitude, hope, and the certainty that no one, no matter how lost or broken, is ever truly alone.